Racist cop puts gun to black woman's head, then fire destroys his house. This will need to be written in a way that draws the reader in immediately with a shocking, cinematic opening. Feels raw and real, as though this could happen in today's world, gives deep emotional resonance, fear, grief, reflection, but also hope, delivers a strong moral lesson about racism, power, justice, and karma. Flows like a gripping narrative essay, with some storytelling, some reflection, and some universal truth. Here's a draft. Racist cop puts gun to black woman's head, then fire destroys his house. The night was supposed to be ordinary. Streetlights flickered across a quiet neighborhood. Kids were inside watching TV, and the summer air carried the hum of cicadas. But in an instant, silence was broken by the sound of screeching tires, a slamming car door, and the sharp voice of a police officer barking orders. He was a man in uniform sworn to protect and serve, but his eyes carried something far darker than duty. His gaze locked on a young black woman standing by her car. She hadn't committed a crime. She hadn't resisted. She was guilty of nothing more than existing in a skin color he had already condemned. With trembling hands, she tried to explain herself, but before the words could leave her lips, cold metal pressed against her temple. A gun, a police officer's gun. The trembling barrel kissed her skin, while hatred dripped from his voice. Don't move. In that moment, her world froze. Time slowed. She thought of her mother, her children, her dreams all hanging in the balance of a man's rage and prejudice. To him, she wasn't a daughter, a sister, a human being. She was a target. This is not fiction for so many black Americans. It is the bone-deep reality of being criminalized by skin color. It is the chilling weight of systemic racism wrapped in a badge and holstered with power. But strange, mysterious, sometimes poetic has its own way of writing justice. Days later, the same officer who once stood over her with a gun found himself staring at the flames, consuming his own home. His walls crumbled, his possessions turned to ash, and as neighbors watched the inferno rage, whispers spread. That's the same cop who put a gun to that woman's head. The fire didn't just devour wood and brick. It devoured the illusion of untouchable power. It became a symbol, a lesson, a mirror held up to society. The gun at her head, more than a moment, imagine the terror of that woman. A black woman already carrying the heavy armor of survival in a country where skin color too often dictates life expectancy. She wasn't just facing a gun, she was facing centuries of history. Every lynching, every slave auction, every stop and frisk, every traffic stop gone wrong, lived in that barrel. The officer might have thought it was just him and her. A moment of intimidation, but he carried the full weight of America's sins in that gun. For her, survival wasn't just about walking away. It was about reclaiming dignity in a world that tried to strip it away. Her tears were not of weakness, but of exhaustion, of knowing that even if she lived, the story might not be believed. The trauma might not be validated. The cop might never face justice. That's the cruelty of racism. It not only endangers your body, but also erases your truth. The fire. Karma's unpredictable flame. When the fire came for him, it wasn't orchestrated by human hands. No protester lit the match. No angry neighbor set it ablaze. Nature or fate chose the timing. And in that timing, people saw something bigger. They saw the fire as a sermon. They saw it as karma catching up with a man who misused power. A man who thought the badge made him God. The same house where he felt safe, where he returned after terrorizing others, was no longer standing. The walls that held his secrets had collapsed. The air he once breathed freely was now thick with smoke. Some might call it coincidence, others call it consequence. But everyone felt the weight of the irony. Power and fragility. What's striking about this story is the fragile balance of power. One moment, a man with a gun in his hand controls life and death. The next moment, he is powerless before the blaze eating through his home. That is the truth about power built on hate. It is temporary. It gives the illusion of control, but it cannot stop what is coming. Fire doesn't ask for permission. Justice doesn't need an invitation. The officer thought the gun in his hand made him superior. But flames do not respect rank. They do not salute the badge. They reduce everything to dust. To society in the mirror. This isn't just about one racist cop. It's about us. It's about a society where black mothers have to teach their children how to survive traffic stops before they even teach them how to drive. It's about a culture where people in uniform can terrorize without accountability, where videos of black suffering go viral but rarely lead to systemic change. The fire is a mirror. It forces us to look at the fragile structures we build on injustice. Racism is a house of dry timber. It looks solid, but one spark can bring it down. And when it falls, it doesn't just take down the oppressor. It shakes the entire neighborhood. Lesson: the story teaches us this. Abuse of power carries a cost. You may not see it immediately, but it collects interest. And when it returns multiplied. Hate cannot shield you. You can hide behind a badge, a gun, or a uniform, but hate has a way of circling back. Human dignity is sacred. To put a gun to a woman's head because of her skin is not just an act of violence. It's a violation against humanity itself. Justice has many forms. Sometimes it comes in a courtroom. Sometimes it comes in fire. Sometimes it comes in the collective voice of a people who refuse to be silenced. The woman's survivalettes returned to Hertha, woman who stared down death and lived. She didn't just survive for herself. She survived for every black woman who had been silenced before her, for every ancestor who endured whips and chains, for every child who needs proof that survival is possible. Her story became a spark of courage. It reminded people that while the oppressor may seem powerful, there are forces greater than guns and badges. There is truth. There is resilience. There is the unshakable fact that wrong will never win forever. The burning house, as simple. The flames ate through his home. They burned more than wood. They burned the illusion of invincibility, and maybe, just maybe, as he watched everything he owned collapse, he remembered the terror in that woman's eyes. Maybe he felt, for one fleeting second, what it means to have your life hanging in someone else's hands. Maybe. Or maybe he didn't, but the fire still spoke louder than he ever could. A call to the audience, to you, the reader. This story isn't meant for passive consumption. It's a warning. What kind of world do we want? A world where power is measured in fear, or a world where justice is measured in dignity? The cop's gun and his burning house are two ends of the same truth. What you inflict on others will eventually circle back to you. Racism is not just the problem of the victim. It is a poison that corrodes the soul of the oppressor, a fire waiting to ignite under the house of hate. The lesson is simple but profound. Do not build your house on injustice, because when the fire comes in, it always comes. It will not spare you. Final word. Day racist cop put a gun to a black woman's head, thinking her life was his to command. But days later, fire reduced his own life to rubble. That is not just a story. It is a metaphor for our time. The question is not whether fire will come for hate. The question is, will we learn the lesson before it does?